Today, I did not forget my appointment with the doctor for the results of James's autism evaluation. You see, I already made a video talking about the results of the neuro psych eval, but he had the ADOS, and so today, she already told me she was basically certain that he was autistic, but formalities and all that, he actually had to go through the testing. And after the testing, I spoke with the man who administered the ADOS, and he said that during the first half of the ADOS, he was sitting there thinking, no way. But then during the second half of the ADOS, he was sitting there saying, okay, I see it. Yeah, I see it. But that the hardest thing was that James's hyperactivity was kind of overshadowing things, and that he was having a hard time seeing through his hyperactivity. So they were going to have to go over everything and see. And so I walked away from that thinking, I have no idea. Because I went into it thinking I have no idea. I had talked to a lot of therapists and doctors beforehand. And I mean, when I went to his doctor, I think it was like a year ago at this point, I had said, I think it was for his physical, for his 5-year-old physical, which is after his birthday because it kind of gets pushed back a little farther each year. And I said, hey, I have these concerns. I mean, actually, this goes even farther back. I mean, I didn't even have concerns initially, really, if you want to start with when autism first came up for James. And I feel like I should always start with this. If you're new here, because some people probably will be new here, I'm autistic, my husband's autistic, and before today, 4 of our 5 children also had diagnoses and were officially autistic. And we had one child who did not have a diagnosis before today of being autistic officially. When James was, I think, 3, we went for his 3-year-old appointment, and I filled out that little screening thing, the MChat. And when I filled it out, I felt really good about it. I felt like I mean, you can't really ace those things or fail those things, but I felt like James was really flippin' neurotypical when I filled that thing out. And so I was really surprised when my phone rang. We were leaving a genetics appointment. I don't remember if it was for Maggie or James. It would have had to be for one of the 2 of them. Paul was driving the car. My phone rang and I picked up the phone. It was actually one of the pediatricians. That's not James's pediatrician, but it was a pediatrician that the girls saw that he also must have been seen with that year just because of schedules. She said that he had a lot of red flags. I think he had 5 red flags, 4 or 5 red flags on the MChat. And if you don't know, the MChat is a basically child development screening. I can't remember what the acronym stands for right now, but it's a screening tool that screens young children for the possibility of being autistic. And so I was really surprised. And she made it sound really quite serious that he had so many red flags. They were sending him over for an ADOS at the same place that Maggie had hers at. And I believe at this point I was pregnant with Tessie, maybe? Oh, no, Tessie, if he was 3, which he was 3, then Tessie would be born at that point. Tessie would have been like an infant. So at that point in time, we had 5 kids and one of them had an autism diagnosis. So we went through the testing, and it wasn't like they said, no, he isn't autistic. They said mild social affect. If there persist being whatever, I don't know, abnormalities, or I can't remember the wording, bring him back and have him reevaluated. Mild social affect. And I remember Googling and looking it up and being kind of confused by what mild social affect meant. You can Google it too if you're curious. I'm probably not going to, off the top of my head years later, give you the best explanation. Back to now. When I went to the doctor originally this time around, about a year ago, probably 10 months ago, because this has all kind of been stretched out by COVID. He was going to have his test, I believe it was March 30th of last year, but then COVID happened, and I didn't want to know badly enough to have a telehealth appointment, to be honest. I didn't think it would make that much of a difference, especially with everything going on, so we just waited till they were actually having appointments again. There are many other appointments that I was willing to do through telehealth. We've had so many neurology, gastro, various appointments through telehealth, but I was trying to figure out how you would do a 4-hour neuropsych eval over telehealth, and it sounded like maybe it was the worst thing ever. We decided to wait. Last winter, I went to his doctor after talking to a lot of people I knew because of our girls, and after my own diagnosis and my husband's diagnosis, and I said, hey, is there a chance that he could have signs of autism because me and Paul are autistic? And he was like, not this much, no. I said, okay, is there a chance that he could have meltdowns every day because he's so frustrated, because he's neurotypical and living with autistic people? Because I could see, when you're autistic and you're living with when you're autistic living in a neurotypical world, sometimes it's really frustrating. So maybe if for a neurotypical person, sometimes if you're living in an autistic household, maybe that would be really, really frustrating too. I could see that. And he was like, not that much. It wouldn't be. When we talked about it a little bit more, and we thought that probably, because when he went to school, he had no meltdowns, but then he'd come home and it would kind of be that whole bottle it up at school and then come home and just melt. And so we talked about it a little bit more, and there was also he is very, very strict logical thinking, and also some very, very, very sensory, very high sensory things. So at the end of talking about that, he ordered the evaluation. Fast forward to now. It finally happened. Today we got the results. I don't know. I think after the second half of the evaluation, I kind of talked myself back out of it. Like, I didn't really think for sure that she was going to say that he was autistic. And again, for the final time, because this will be everyone in our family, she came back on and she said it was very obvious from the neuropsych exam and from the ADOS that he is autistic. Level 1, but mild to moderate. She went over everything, and that was that. And so it's all of us. The genes are strong in our family. I think it's good to know. Instead of collecting those other labels, since we've gone from online schooling, I don't know if I have officially said this, we've gone from online schooling, which was not really working for the boys, to homeschooling. And with James, the reason was because everything was baby stuff, and I spent all day fighting him on doing it because he could probably finish school in half an hour and be done. But it was too easy. It was too easy for him, and I found out now why, because they were learning to count and say their ABCs because it's kindergarten and that's what you're supposed to do in kindergarten, which would have been fine for any of our other kids. But I finally bought him my first and second grade math book, which I thought would be better for him, and that is also baby stuff. So today I let him just play on this math program on my computer, and apparently what he needs to be doing is adding double-digit numbers and fractions. And when I asked him how he knew to add fractions, he said, "It's just so obvious, Mom." I don't even know what level math book to get him at this point, because I want to buy him like a math book so he could just work through the math book. And I keep telling him, like, let's just go through the math book as fast as you want so that we can see where you stop. He doesn't really need to be counting and saying which is greater, I guess, at this point, because he's super bored with that and counting kittens and penguins. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out what he can do and what he can't do without boring him to death, because that's when he starts to get himself into trouble. I'm starting to see what the problem is. I was talking to the doctor about this. He read a Pokemon book to me. He's not hyperlexic, I don't think. He can read and do math usually when he's not thinking about it. Like, he'll read hard words when he's distracted. If he thinks about it, he starts to get stuck on some of them. So he read half the book, and then I helped him with the other half of the words. But he read this book to me, and while he was reading the book, he was climbing around. He was lifting himself on his arms and doing circles around the stool and going back and forth with his arms on the table, and then doing another circle around the stool and swinging himself in circles. And that was how he read the book to me. It worked, but all I could think was, how are we going to ever do school? He gets into trouble when we try to do normal grade level stuff, and I can totally see him being in trouble if we tried to put him in a classroom. And this is totally, I think, how kids with ADHD get into trouble a lot of the time. That's what the doctor said too when I was talking with her. He got above average on the testing that they gave him, but she didn't feel like the testing accurately measured what he can do because of his ADHD. She said she thought he probably just got bored and stopped trying midway through the testing. And she said that will be the challenge, figuring out how to educate him that That's usually what happens. They need to be spinning and moving and answering the questions, and that doesn't work in a school setting. Oh, I feel the irony. I said I was never going to homeschool. I desperately wanted to homeschool, and then I couldn't because it was too much. And now that I don't want to homeschool, it's what it looks like is going to happen. I've got to get back to that place so I desperately want to again. My grandpa was an engineer. I remember when I was in high school at some point, him telling me about one of his math classes in college. The teacher always insisted that everyone show their work, and that he could look at a problem and know the answer to a problem, but he wouldn't know how he knew the answer, and that it couldn't be marked correct unless you showed your work. And I don't know, sometimes it reminds me of James when he is doing his math work. I've seen him figure out a problem and watched him do it incorrectly, and then he will look at it again and just write down the right answer. And I don't know how he does it, but he reminds me of my grandpa when he does that. It reminds me of that story every single time that he does that. Anyways, that is it for today. If you like this video, we'd love it if you give it a thumbs up, and if you're interested in all things autism, we'd love it if you'd hit subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.